Hello there. Best day to buy a house is, we'll talk about it. Also, a consumer guide to closing after you sign the documents. Los Gatos Home of the Week, list price productions, and Tuesday's Santa Clara County highs and lows report. Let's get moving so I can get back to bed. I slept like crap last night. All right, let's see. What are we drinking? Cold coffee. This year's best day for buying a home is fast approaching. November timeframe is the best time to buy a house. If you're in the market for a great deal, November is the time to get in contract. March, April, May is our selling season. That's when most of the buyers come out and becomes a buyer or a feeding frenzy, a buyer frenzy. And during the summer, it slows down and then it picks back up around August, September because kids get back into school and then it slows down and then it really slows down. I have one listing that I put up last week and I have one potential bite on it. And then I have another listing that has 7 offers on it. And I have another one that had 3 offers, and that one went way over. This is across the United States. The best time to buy or to close is on December 4th, which if you go back 30 days on average to close a house, you get the best premium above automated valuation model. We have our own Zillow number, but it's called an AVM and it's an algorithm and we don't really go by it. It's based on where we think we should start and then goes up from there. As fall turns into winter, data shows home prices tend to fall. Adam found that November consistently offers the best opportunities for savings as home premiums and competition reach their lowest points of the year. Does this mean you should wait for an entire year? No, because the rates are horrible in November. So you're going to get a better rate come January when things are really slow and you can negotiate that down. You can get a seller credit or you can buy points, etc. Other days when home buyers can get the best deal include October 2nd, which home prices average a 5% premium. Remember, summer doldrums, September comes in, people get back to work, and then we find desperate sellers. And December 24th and January 16th, both of which average 5.1%, and November 3rd, which is what does this mean? It means there are certain days throughout the year you can absolutely get a good deal. Now, January 16th, that means right about now you should be shopping for a home and get a decent bargain on your home. Are you going to get below asking? You could if it's the wrong condition and overpriced and in the bad location. But do you really want that house? Do you want a fixer upper or do you want a turnkey house? Do you want a mansion or do you want a shack? Totally up to you. So just keep that in mind. This is done by Scotsman Guide. Scotsman Guide is for lenders, loan professionals to understand the market better, and that's where I got that from. This is from National Association of Realtors, Consumer Guide, Steps Between Signing and Closing on a Home. You've done all the front-end research, you've gotten pre-approved, you've gone home shopping, you've gotten exhausted, you've finally gotten a contract. Now what happens? What happens if after I sign a purchase agreement? There's a couple things that we have to run around and do for your behalf, including get your deposit done, open escrow, due diligence, and make sure your loan is fully approved. So we'll go through that. What happens after you sign the purchase agreement? You will go into escrow. It's a third party that will take both your contracts and make sure that every line is dotted and T is crossed and etc. and everything is the same. And then they'll accept your initial down payment. When it goes to closing, they'll arrange payoff for your existing loan, order signs or sign-offs, and record the deed to the county assessor, and then also fund you. They do a lot. They do a ton of work. Some places don't do title insurance, so you have to have 2 different companies doing it. Some places have lawyers doing all this. It's dependent on where you are. I'm telling you about what we do here in Northern California. In Southern California, it's even different. What goes into an escrow account? Buyer puts the earnest money deposit. Typically, it's 3%. It could be $1,000. It could be $100. It could be $10,000. It could be 1%. But we typically want to see a 3% deposit into escrow as earnest money. One, it gives consideration to the contract, which means it's a legal binding contract. We have something inside the contract that says liquidated damages. The contract is designed to protect both the seller and the buyer. Now, this is really dry and put you to sleep, but understand that there's contingencies put in place to protect the buyer. There's property condition, loan approval, appraisal, and the need to sell your house. If anything happens during the contingency period or the due diligence period, the buyer can back out. They lose a job, it means they're not loan approved, doesn't appraise, the seller doesn't want to come to terms, etc. or the property inspection report comes back and there's $20,000, $50,000 worth of termite damage and the seller doesn't want to fix it, the buyer's allowed to walk away from that and get their report, their earnest money back. After that period, typically 17 days, after that period, the buyer has nothing to hang on. And within liquidated damages, it states that if the buyer defaults for any reason outside of the contingency period, the seller is owed that money. Now, again, California courts play favoritism to the buyers, so you can go and argue that all throughout the things, like what happens if I break my leg and I can't work on the 25th day, and now I can't work, so I can't afford it, or I get laid off and I can't afford to pay for this house. Seller would agree, you can't buy this house, you don't have a job, I'm going to let you have your money back. But sometimes ego gets involved, and that's why we have all this stuff. 3%, that's the maximum you're allowed to keep as liquidated damages. And when we're selling a house, the agent wants to make sure that they're protecting the seller, so they're asking for 3%. Could it be $1,000? It absolutely can. If you have 5, 10, 15 offers and you're $1,000 deposit and everybody else is putting 3%, which one are you going to choose as a seller? What do you need to do before you can close? So you need to make sure your loan is approved. You're going to have to resubmit all your documents, your W-2s, your bank accounts, pay stub, blah, blah, blah. The lender is going to call back, make sure you have a job, do all this stuff. And then they're going to give you a final net sheet of how much money you need to bring in. It's going to be some erroneous odd number, but that's the number you have to come in with. And a good lender is going to show that to you right before you go to closing and say, make sure you have a check or wire this money to the escrow account so we can close on time. You can also ask for repairs to the seller, that kind of thing. And then there's also, let's see, homeowners insurance. You're going to have homeowners insurance and sometimes fire insurance, earthquake insurance, impound accounts, and all that stuff. So you got to make sure all that stuff makes sense to you and you understand it completely, because you're talking about $1 million, $2 million, $12 million. So make sure you know what you're doing. There's also an appraisal, the professional opinion of value. I can't give it to you because I'm involved in the process, but we have a third party person that gets randomly chosen to do that appraisal. The lender takes care of it, pushes a button, and then an email goes to an appraiser and he says, do you want to take this job? And then they say, yeah, and then they do appraisal. And that can be anywhere from $500 to $1,200 these days. Inspections. Do you need an inspection? You absolutely don't need an inspection unless you're doing USDA or VA, sometimes FHA, depending on the lender. An inspection, there's a few different ones, but the main ones we work with is property inspection, which should include a roof inspection, and also a termite or pest inspection. There's foundation, there's pool, there's all sorts of other things. There's property line assessments and all these different types of inspections. You can get a septic tank inspection. You can get water inspection. Really depends on what you're doing. Fact is that we're trying to make real estate transparent transactions so the buyer knows what they're buying. If you say, I am not going to buy this house without 15 different inspections, that's your right. But if you have 10 or 15 offers and you're competing against that, there you go. That's the decision. A good seller will provide those inspection reports so you can buy it, know what you're buying. And there's a case of liability. I've heard of sellers refusing to do inspections and refusing to let the buyer inspect the house, but then you're taking on all the liability. Is it a wise choice to do that? I don't think so, but that's not my choice. It's the seller's choice. I always recommend that they have all the inspections done. That way you know what you're buying. You're alleviating yourself of that liability and preventing potential lawsuits. How long will this take? I can close a loan in 10 days. I can close a house in 10 days. Typically we have 30 days. I see it go from 15 to 25, 30, 40, depending on the needs. That really depends on the seller and the buyer's needs. If you want a quick close, we can close it quick, but you have to do everything we talked about before, done before. So make sure you do it. What happens at close? While you sign documents, you get a little cramp in your hands, you have your thumbprints, make sure you have your IDs and that you've wired all your stuff. So there's a lot of pre-planning, and then you go in and sign all the documents, including a deed, a promissory note, and all the other disclosures that are going to have to happen with wet ink, and you use a pen. Then you sign, and then 3 days later, you close. That's pretty much it. There you go. This episode is brought to you by the Home Inspection Checklist. If you're thinking about selling your house, download this Home Inspection Checklist. It does not serve or remove the need to have a professional inspection done. It allows you to go through your house, nook and cranny, and figure out what needs to be repaired before you have an inspector come in. So you can have a clean inspection report. But also, Make sure you disclose every repair you've done. Do it now. Los Gatos home of the week. This one is walking distance to downtown, which is North Santa Cruz Ave. Not my listing, 5-bedroom, 4.5 baths, 4,000 square feet, built in 1978, and it's Glen Ridge Ave. And this looks like it's a tinderbox. It's a huge house. Look at that. This is nice. And I can just tell you by looking at the map that this is in the fire zone. So yeah, when you go to close, you have a loan on this house, which is $4.9 million, you're going to have fire insurance. There is no order to these photos and no floor plan. And then this is list price reduction. This is Burning Tree, not my listing, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square feet, built in 1970, $1.5 million. The original list price was 1.55, and it's right here, right by the golf course and Santa Teresa, but it's in Martinville. This is an okay house. I don't like the way the upstairs is situated, and it always feels, every time I go into this model, it feels like there's a lot of movement of the joists, just the way they designed it. Not my favorite. There you go. And then highs and lows. Los Gatos Hills is the most expensive house on Miranda, not my listing. Took 40 days to sell. Original was $13 million, then they dropped it to $12 million. Final sale, so they walked away from almost $1 million, but they sold it. Let's take a look at this bad boy. Yeah, it's nice. When you're a market maker, you can wait, but you're also not going to get the deals sometimes, because there's people out there willing to buy these houses. Wow, 3 Tesla banks. Yeah, it's a nice house. And then the lowest priced house is this one in Claremont Ave in San Jose. Listed at $699, sold for $800. Took 6 days to sell. 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 948 square feet. Holy moly. I'm just getting claustrophobic thinking about it. There you go. And then the ones that are still for sale is La Vida Real and Del Puerto Canyon Road, Livermore. This actually takes an hour and a half to drive to San Jose, believe it or not. Unless you have a helicopter, then you have 80 acres and you can rebuild it. Totally up to you. And here's a chart of the